I never imagined that the proudest day of my life would become the day my own son regretted a decision he could never take back. 3 hours after my retirement ceremony ended, my phone wouldn't stop vibrating. 1 missed call, then 5, then 20. By sunset, there were 19 missed calls waiting for me. Almost every one of them came from my son. The same son who had told me just a day earlier that my retirement ceremony wasn't worth canceling his vacation. If you enjoy heartfelt stories about family, loyalty, sacrifice, and the life lessons only time can teach, welcome to this channel. Please subscribe, leave a comment telling me where you're watching from, and join our growing family. Now, let me tell you what really happened. My name is William. I'm 70 years old, and for the past 35 years, I've carried one memory that never left me. It wasn't the medals. It wasn't the recognition. It wasn't even the nightmares that still woke me from sleep some nights. It was the face of my best friend, the man who gave his life so I could keep mine. Everything that happened afterward, my family, my career, even this very retirement ceremony, was only possible because of the sacrifice he made that day. The governor had invited me to the state capitol to receive the highest bravery award our state could give a retired rescue officer. The ceremony was being broadcast across the state, and they told me it was meant to honor not only my years of service, but also the rescue mission that changed dozens of families forever. There was only one person I truly wanted sitting in the front row. My son. He promised he'd be there. Instead, he boarded a plane for a luxury vacation with his wife. And by the time he finally saw what happened at that ceremony on social media, everything had already changed forever. It all began 35 years earlier. Back then, I wasn't thinking about retirement, medals, or recognition. I was 35 years old, serving as a state rescue officer alongside the man I trusted more than anyone else in the world, my best friend, Michael. We had trained together for years. We'd celebrated birthdays together, watched each other's children grow, and made one promise long before either of us became fathers. If one of us goes in, Michael always said with a grin, the other comes back with him. Neither of us ever imagined the day would come when only one of us would return. Just before sunrise on a cold October morning, an explosion tore through one of the state's largest chemical manufacturing plants. The blast could be heard for miles. Part of the building collapsed instantly, trapping dozens of workers beneath twisted steel, concrete, and burning debris. By the time our team arrived, chaos had already taken over. Families stood outside screaming names. Some people begged us to save their husbands. Others prayed on their knees. Without wasting a second, Michael and I led the first rescue team inside. For nearly 4 hours, we fought smoke, fire, collapsing walls, and the constant fear that the building could come down at any moment. One by one, we pulled trapped workers to safety. Some were unconscious. Some were badly burned. Some walked out carrying coworkers on their backs. By the time we finished our final rescue, more than 40 people were alive because our team refused to give up. Then everything changed. A deafening crack echoed above us. The ceiling began collapsing. A massive steel beam crashed down between us. Before I could react, Michael shoved me with every bit of strength he had. I remember falling through a cloud of dust. Then darkness. When I opened my eyes, I was outside surrounded by paramedics. My first words were, "Where's Michael?" No one answered. Then the rescue commander slowly removed his helmet and looked me straight in the eyes. "He got you out." But the second collapse took him. I couldn't breathe. I kept shaking my head, refusing to believe it. Then one of the firefighters handed me a small chain Michael always wore around his neck. Wrapped around, it was a folded piece of paper stained with dirt. Inside were only a few handwritten words that another rescuer had managed to write down after reaching him. "Tell my wife I love her and promise me one thing. Don't let my son grow up feeling like he lost everyone." Standing there, covered in dust and tears, I made the easiest promise and the hardest promise of my entire life. I looked toward the smoke rising over that ruined factory and whispered, "I give you my word, my friend." I had no idea that promise would quietly shape the next 35 years of my life. Keeping that promise didn't mean trying to replace Michael. No one could. A boy only gets one father, and I respected that more than anything. After Michael's funeral, I visited his wife, Sarah, whenever she needed help, Sometimes it was fixing a broken fence. Sometimes it was helping with paperwork she didn't understand. Sometimes it was simply dropping off groceries without making it look like charity. And every few weeks, I'd spend an afternoon with her little boy, Daniel. He was only 6 years old when he buried his father. At first, he barely spoke. He would just sit quietly, holding the little wooden toy truck Michael had carved for him a few months before the accident. I never forced conversations. Sometimes we'd fish. Sometimes we'd play catch. Sometimes we'd sit on a park bench eating ice cream without saying a single word. Slowly, life moved forward. Around that same time, my own wife, Margaret, gave birth to our son, Ethan. The day I held him for the first time, I remember thinking how unfair life could be. One little boy had just gained a father. Another had just lost his forever. As the years passed, I worked every overtime shift I could find to provide for my family. Rescue work wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills. Many nights I came home exhausted, yet Margaret always greeted me with the same warm smile that somehow made every difficult day feel worthwhile. She also became the quiet bridge between our family and Michael's. Every Christmas, she'd insist that Daniel and his mother spend part of the day with us. Every birthday, she'd make sure there was an extra gift waiting for him. She never treated him like a guest. She treated him like someone whose father had once given our family a future. Whenever I thanked her, she'd simply smile and say, "William, people won't remember how much money we leave behind. They'll remember who stood beside them when life became difficult." I didn't realize it then, but those simple words would one day become the very lesson my own son needed most. For many years, everything seemed to unfold exactly the way Margaret and I had dreamed. Ethan grew into a bright, hard-working young man. He did well in school, earned a good job, and eventually built a successful career. Watching him achieve things I had only hoped for filled me with a kind of pride that only a parent can truly understand. I often told my friends, "My greatest accomplishment isn't the lives I helped save, it's the son I helped raise." Looking back now, those words are the hardest ones for me to remember. Success has a strange way of changing people. Not all at once. Not in ways you notice overnight. It happens quietly. One missed Sunday dinner becomes two. A forgotten birthday turns into a rushed phone call. A holiday visit becomes, "Maybe next year, Dad." At first, Ethan always had a reason. Work was demanding. He had an important meeting. A client needed him. Then he married a woman named Rebecca. She wasn't a bad person, but she loved the kind of life that revolved around expensive vacations, exclusive resorts, and keeping up appearances. Before long, weekends became getaways, holidays became luxury trips, and family gatherings slowly disappeared from their calendar. Margaret never complained. Instead, she'd set 2 extra plates on the dining table every Christmas, just in case. Every year, one of those plates went untouched. She'd quietly clear it away with a smile that never quite reached her eyes. After Margaret passed away, I thought things might change. I believed losing his mother would remind Ethan how precious family really was. Instead, the visits became even shorter. Sometimes months passed without seeing him. The phone calls lasted only a few minutes. Still, I never begged him to come. Love isn't something you should have to chase. But while one son was slowly drifting farther away, another young man was quietly walking closer into my life. And I didn't yet realize how much that would matter. Daniel never tried to become part of my life. That was what made his kindness so special. He never asked for favors. Never reminded me that his father had died, saving mine. Never acted as though I owed him anything. In his eyes, I'd already fulfilled my promise to Michael years ago. As he grew older, Daniel built a simple, honest life. He worked as a maintenance supervisor at a local manufacturing company. It wasn't a glamorous career, but he carried himself with the same quiet integrity his father had. What Daniel lacked in wealth, he made up for in something far more valuable. He always showed up. The first time I slipped on my icy driveway and bruised my hip, Daniel arrived before Ethan even returned my phone call. When my old pickup refused to start on a freezing morning, Daniel spent half his Saturday fixing it and refused to accept a single dollar. After Margaret passed away, every Sunday morning he would bring fresh coffee before driving me to the cemetery. We'd clean her headstone, replace the flowers, and sit together in silence for a while. Some days we talked about life. Other days, we didn't need to. Whenever I had a doctor's appointment, he'd simply call the night before and ask, "What time should I pick you up?" Not if I needed a ride. What time? More than once, I tried slipping money into his pocket before he left. Every time, he'd quietly put it back on my kitchen table. Finally, I asked him, "Daniel, why won't you ever let me repay you?" He smiled, and for just a moment, I saw Michael standing in front of me again. "Because you already repaid the only debt that mattered," he said. "You kept your promise to my father, let me keep mine to you." Those words stayed with me. I realized that trust isn't earned in one extraordinary moment. It's earned through hundreds of ordinary ones. Without either of us noticing, Daniel had quietly become the son who never failed to show up. And before long, that quiet loyalty would be tested in front of the entire state, with consequences none of us could have imagined. A few months after my retirement papers were approved, I received a phone call from the governor's office. At first, I thought it was a prank. The woman introduced herself and explained that the state wanted to honor me with its highest civilian bravery award, not just for my years of service, but for a rescue mission 35 years earlier that had saved more than 40 lives. Then she added one more detail. The ceremony would be televised across the state. For a man who had spent his career avoiding attention, standing in front of cameras felt more intimidating than running into burning buildings. The first person I wanted to tell was Margaret. Then reality hit. She'd been gone for nearly 3 years. I sat alone, holding the invitation, wishing she were still here to laugh about me finally wearing a suit instead of a rescue uniform. When I called Ethan, he sounded excited. "Dad, that's incredible. I wouldn't miss it for the world." His words gave me hope. I reserved the best seat in the front row with his name on it. A week before the ceremony, he even called to confirm the time. I truly believed things were finally changing. But the afternoon before the ceremony, my phone rang. "Dad, Rebecca surprised me with a luxury vacation. We leave tomorrow morning." I said nothing. "It's just a retirement ceremony," he continued. "They'll give you a medal, people will clap, and we'll celebrate when I get back." I glanced at Margaret's empty chair before quietly saying, "I understand, son. Have a safe trip." After we hung up, I looked at the invitation one last time. Then I picked up my phone. And called Daniel. He answered before the first ring had even finished. The moment I told him about the ceremony, he agreed to come without asking a single question. Neither of us knew that one simple phone call was about to change all of our lives forever. The morning of my retirement ceremony arrived with a strange mix of gratitude and sadness. As Daniel and I walked into the state capitol, television cameras lined the entrance, reporters filled the hallways, and hundreds of guests had already taken their seats. I never imagined that a quiet rescue from 35 years ago would still be remembered by so many people. When my name was called, I slowly walked onto the stage. The governor smiled warmly as he placed the state's highest civilian bravery award around my neck. The audience rose to their feet, applauding for what felt like forever. I thought that was the end. Then the governor stepped back to the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "there is one more surprise." The room fell completely silent. If you're enjoying this story, I'd really appreciate it if you take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support truly means a lot to us and encourages us to keep bringing you more heartfelt grandpa stories like this one. He explained that for the past 35 years, the families whose loved ones survived, that rescued together with the businesses that survived because those workers made it home, had quietly contributed to something called the Heroes Legacy Foundation. No one had told me it even existed. Today, he continued, that foundation is worth $700,000. A wave of surprised whispers swept across the auditorium. Then came the announcement that no one expected. The board has unanimously decided that only one person should choose the very first lifetime trustee of this foundation, William. Every head turned toward me. Without saying it aloud, I could almost hear what everyone was thinking. He's going to choose his son. Instead, I looked into the audience. "Daniel," I said softly, "would you please come up here?" The room became so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. Daniel looked completely stunned as he slowly walked onto the stage. The chairman asked gently, Mr. William, would you like to tell everyone why you've made this choice? I looked at Daniel, then out across the crowd. His father saved my life once, I said, my voice trembling. But he spent the last 12 years proving he deserved my trust. For a moment, no one moved. Then the entire auditorium rose to its feet. The applause echoed through the building as people wiped tears from their eyes. Before we had even left the stage, phones across the audience were already recording, uploading, and sharing what they had just witnessed. 3 hours later, my own phone began vibrating without stopping. By the time Daniel and I left the Capitol, I still had no idea what had happened online. To me, it had simply been a meaningful day. I had accepted an award, honored my best friend, and kept a promise that had quietly shaped the last 35 years of my life. Then my phone started vibrating. Once. Twice. Then it never seemed to stop. Calls from old coworkers, former rescue officers, neighbors, relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. Even local news stations wanted interviews. Everyone was talking about the same moment. The moment I asked Daniel to stand beside me. By the time I reached home, clips from the ceremony had spread across television, Facebook, YouTube, and every other social media platform. People weren't talking about the money. They were talking about loyalty, about promises, about what it truly means to be family. Nearly 300 miles away, Ethan was relaxing at a luxury beach resort with Rebecca when his phone suddenly lit up with notification after notification. At first, he ignored them. Then he noticed dozens of missed calls from cousins, family friends, and former neighbors. Confused, he opened one of the messages. It was the video. He watched in disbelief as I called Daniel onto the stage. Then he heard my words. His father saved my life once, but he spent the last 12 years proving he deserved my trust. The color drained from Ethan's face. Rebecca grabbed his phone and watched the rest of the clip. When the announcer mentioned the $700,000 Heroes Legacy Foundation, her expression changed instantly. She turned toward Ethan. Your father just gave away what should have stayed in this family. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then they hurriedly packed their bags, checked out of the resort, and booked the first flight home. Not because a father had been honored. Not because a lifelong promise had finally been fulfilled. But because, for the first time, they believed something valuable had slipped through their fingers. And before sunset, there was a knock on my front door. The knock came just before sunset. When I opened the door, Ethan was standing there. Rebecca stood a step behind him, her arms folded tightly across her chest. Neither of them smiled. Neither asked how I was. Ethan walked inside without waiting for an invitation. Dad, he said sharply, I just watched the ceremony. Tell me that isn't true. I closed the door behind them. What part? The foundation, he snapped. That should have stayed in this family. Why would you give it to Daniel? I looked at my son for a long moment. Then I quietly motioned toward the living room. Sit down. He didn't. I want an answer. I nodded. So do I. The room fell silent. Then I looked him in the eyes and asked the only question that mattered. Tell me honestly, Ethan, did you come home because you missed your father, or because you missed $700,000? His mouth opened, but no words came out. The silence told me everything. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. Instead, I spoke as calmly as I could. Do you remember the winter morning I slipped on the driveway? He lowered his eyes. Do you remember sitting beside my hospital bed after the doctors found the problem with my heart? Nothing. Do you remember visiting your mother's grave on her birthday, Christmas dinner after she was gone, my birthdays, or even calling just to ask how I was doing? Each question was met with the same painful silence. Then I asked one final question. Do you know who never missed a single one of those moments? Ethan didn't answer. He didn't have to. We both already knew. Daniel, I said softly. He was there after every doctor's appointment, every Christmas, every birthday, every visit to your mother's grave. He never once asked for anything in return. For the first time since walking through my front door, the anger disappeared from Ethan's face. In its place was something far more difficult to carry. Without saying another word, I walked to the bookshelf and pulled out an old wooden box. I placed it gently on the coffee table. Your mother wanted you to have this one day, I said. Ethan slowly lifted the lid. Inside were family photographs from when he was a little boy, camping trips, fishing afternoons, birthdays, and Christmas mornings. Beneath them was a stack of birthday cards. Each one had his name written on the front in Margaret's handwriting. He looked at me, confused. "She bought those after you started missing birthdays," I said quietly. "Every year she hoped you'd come. Every year she saved the card instead." His hands began to shake. Under the cards lay Margaret's journal, filled with memories, prayers, and one simple wish, that our family would be together again. Then Ethan noticed a sealed envelope. Across the front, in her handwriting, were the words, "No matter how busy life becomes, you'll always be my little boy. I hope we celebrate together next year. Love, Mom." The room was silent as he opened it. He read every word without looking up. Then the tears came. Not loud, not dramatic. Just quiet tears that wouldn't stop falling. When he finished, he held the letter against his chest and covered his face. For the first time that day, I wasn't looking at an angry businessman. I was looking at a little boy who had just lost his mother all over again. In that moment, Ethan finally understood. He hadn't lost a $700,000 foundation. He had lost years he could never buy back. The birthdays, the Christmases, the ordinary afternoons with his mother. Money can always be earned again, but time never waits for anyone. As I watched my son cry, I realized the greatest inheritance Margaret had left him wasn't inside that wooden box. It was the painful truth he had finally found the courage to face. I never changed my decision. Daniel remained the first lifetime trustee of the Heroes Legacy Foundation. He had earned that honor long before anyone placed a title beside his name. Something else changed instead. Ethan stopped talking about the foundation. He stopped trying to undo the past. Instead, he started earning back something far more valuable: my trust. The phone calls became regular. The doctor's appointments were never missed. Holidays were spent together again. Some Sundays, Ethan would arrive first. Other Sundays, Daniel would. Most of the time, they came together. It wasn't perfect. We could never recover the years we had lost. But little by little, we built something new. One afternoon, as the three of us sat on my porch watching the sunset, I looked at the two men beside me. One was the son I had raised. The other was the son I had promised to never leave behind. For the first time in many years, my heart felt completely at peace. 35 years ago, Michael gave his life to save mine. I spent decades trying to honor the promise I made to him. In the end, that promise didn't just give Daniel a father figure. It gave me two sons. And I realized something I'll carry with me for the rest of my life. Family isn't defined only by blood. It's defined by the people who choose to stand beside you year after year, no matter what life brings. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment sharing what this story meant to you, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss our next grandfather story. Until next time, never be too busy for the people who have always made time for you.